Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. This is a podcast where I read old books, sometimes fiction, sometimes non-fiction, in the most boring way I can to try and help blow your spinning mind, enough for you to fall asleep in the most natural way possible. The stresses of life often follow us to bed and keep us company, but I'm here to distract you from them and help you drift away. Before you do fall asleep, if you find Sleepy Time Tales helpful and you would like to support me to keep it going out to you and thousands of your fellow insomniacs, please consider supporting on the Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. If monthly is a bit much, you can also put a tip in the tip jar, and both of these are linked in the show notes. Or you can support Sleepy Time Tales by simply spreading the word. If you know someone struggling to sleep, just tell them about it. And that's enough of that. Snuggle down, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and listen closely as I lead you down the path to sleep. We return this week to Bellarion the Fortunate by Rafael Sabatini. Chapter 5. The Princess. At about the time that the young Lord of Montferrat was sitting down belatedly to table with his tutor and his gentleman-in-waiting, a very bedraggled and chilled Bellarion, who for 2 hours had been standing immersed to the chin in water, his head amid the branches of the alder bush, came cautiously forth at last. He ventured no further, however, than the shallow tongue of land behind the marble pavilion, ready at the first alarm to plunge back into his watery concealment. There he lay, shivering in the warm night, and taking stock of his plight, an exercise which considerably diminished him in his self-confidence and self-esteem. Experience, he had been wont to say, being rather addicted, I gather, to the making of epigrammatic formulae, is the hornbook of fools, unnecessary for the practical purposes of life to the man of wit. It is possible that he was tempted to revise his dictum in the light of events of the disastrous day, recognizing that a little of the worldly experience he'd have despised might have saved him most, if not all, of his disasters. If he admitted this without admitting the fallacy of his aphorism, it was only to reach a conclusion even more humiliating. He had strayed from lack of experience. Therefore it followed, he told himself, that he was a fool. That is one of the dangers of reasoning by syllogism. He had accepted the companionship of a man whose face pronounced him a scoundrel, and whose various actions in the course of the day confirmed the message of his face. And this for no better reason than that the man wore a Franciscan's frock. If his sense did not apprise him that a Franciscan's habit does not necessarily cover a St. Francis, there was a well-known proverb, Cucullum non facit monachum, which he might have remembered, because sense and memory had alike failed him. He had lost his purse. He had lost his letter, which was his passport for the long and arduous journey before him. He had narrowly escaped losing his liberty, and he would be lucky if he were quit of all this mischief without losing his life. The lesser evils of the ruin of a serviceable suit of clothes, and the probability of taking a room as the result of his immersion, went for the moment disregarded. Next he considered the rashness, the senselessness, of his seeking sanctuary in this garden. Was worldly experience really necessary, he wondered, to teach a man that the refuge of which he does not know the exit may easily become a trap? Had he not excelled at the grazie as a chess player, from his care and ability in pondering the moves that must follow the immediate one? Had he read, amongst other works on the art of war, which had ever held his mind in fascination, the De Re Militari of Silvius Faustus, to so little purpose that he could not remember one of its first axioms, to the effect that he is an imprudent leader who goes into action without making sure his line of retreat is open. By such questions as these did Bellarion chastise himself as he crouched shivering in the dark, Still lower did he crouch, making himself one with the earth itself, when presently a moon, like a golden slice of melon, emerged from behind the black bulk of the palace and shed a ghostly radiance upon these gardens. He set himself then at last to seek a course by which he might extricate himself from this trap and from the city of Casale. He was still far from any solution of that problem when a sound of voices recalled him to more immediate things. Two figures mounting the steps of the terrace had to him the appearance of two black human silhouettes that were being slowly pushed up out of the ground. Their outline defined them for women, even before he made out their voices to be feminine. He wondered would one of them be the gracious and beautiful lady who had given him sanctuary, a lady whose like hitherto he had seen only painted on canvas above altars and in mural frescoes, the existence of whose living earthly counterparts had been to him a matter of some subconscious doubt. At the height of the bridge, so tremulously reflected in silver on the black water below, the ladies paused, speaking the while in subdued voices. When they came down the nearer steps and vanished into the temple, whence presently one of them emerged upon that narrow, shallow promontory, calling softly and very vaguely, "Hola, hola, mesa, mesa." He recognized the voice, and recognizing it realized that its quality was individual and unforgettable. To the Lady Valeria as she stood there, it seemed that a part of the promontory's clay at her feet heaved up amorphously, writhed into human shape, and so resolved itself into the man she sought. She checked a startled outcry as she understood the nature of this materialization. "You will be very wet, sir, and cold." Her voice was gentle and solicitous, very different from that in which she addressed her brother's companions and the captain. Bellarion was quite frank, as wet as a drowned man and very nearly as cold, and he added, "I would I could be sure I shall not yet be hung up to dry." The lady laughed softly at his rueful humour. "Nay now, we have brought the means to make you dry more comfortably, but it was very rash of you to have entered here without first making sure that you were not observed." "I was not observed, Madonna, else be sure I should not have entered." He caught in the gloom the sound of her breath indrawn with the hiss of sudden apprehension. "You were not observed? And yet— oh, it is just as I was fearing." And then more briskly, and before he could reply, "But come," she urged him, "we have brought fresh clothes for you. When you are dry, you shall tell me all." Readily enough, he allowed himself to be conducted within the single circular chamber of the marble pavilion, where Madonna Dionara, her lady, awaited. The place was faintly lighted by a lantern placed on a marble table. It contained besides this some chairs that were swathed in coarse sheets, and a long wooden coffer, carved and painted, in shape and size like a sarcophagus, from which another such sheet had just been swept. The three open spaces, between twin pillars facing towards the palace, were now closed by leather curtains. The circular marble floor was laid out as a dial, with the hours and Roman figures of carved brass sunk into a polished surface, a matter this which puzzled him. He was not to guess that this marble pavilion was a copy in miniature of a Roman temple of Apollo, and that in the center of the domed roof there was a circular opening for the sun, through which its rays so entered as as the day progressed, a time-telling shadow moved across the hours figured in their circle on the floor. Overhead there was a confusion of poles and scaffolding and trailing dust sheets, and in a corner an array of pails and buckets, and all the litter of suspended painters' work. Dimly on one of the walls he could make out a fresco that was half painted, the other half in charcoal outline. On the table, which was swathed like all other furnishings, the lantern revealed a bundle of red garments, lately loosed from a confining cloak of black. Into these he was bidden to change at once. Red, he was told, had been deliberately chosen, because all that the captain seemed to know of him was that he'd been dressed in green. So that not merely would his protectress render him dry and warm again, she would disguise him. The ladies, meanwhile, would keep watch in the garden immediately below. They had brought a lute. If one of them should sing to it, this would mean that she sounded the alarm, and he must hide in the coffer, taking with him everything that might betray his presence, including the lantern which he must extinguish. Flint and steel and tinder had not been forgotten, so that light might be rekindled when the danger was overpast. Her Highness raised the lid of the coffer to reveal to him the mechanism of the snaplock. This was released, of course, by the key, which should then be withdrawn. Provided he did this, once he allowed the lid to close upon him, no one would be able to open it from the outside, whilst from the inside it was an easy matter, even in the dark, to release the catch. Meanwhile, the keyhole would provide him with sufficient air and at the same time permit him to judge by sounds of what was happening. The wet garments he removed were to be made into a bundle and dropped into the coffer, whence they would afterwards be taken and destroyed. Finally, he was given 10 minutes in which to make the change. Abruptly, he found himself alone, and so impressed by her commands that already his fingers were swiftly untrussing his points. He went briskly to work, first to strip himself, then to rub himself dry and restore his chilled circulation, for which purpose he heedlessly employed the black cloak in which the fresh garments had been bundled. Then he set about donning the scarlet raiment of fine quality and modish fashion, all the while lost in wonder of her graciousness and resource. She revealed herself, he reflected, as a woman fit to lead and to command, a woman with a methodical mind and well-ordered intelligence, which many a captain of men might envy. And she revealed herself, too, as intensely womanly, an angel of compassion. Although clearly a lady of great rank, she nevertheless went to so much pains, and thought to save a wretched fugitive like himself, and this without pausing to ascertain if he were worthy of compassion. As abruptly as she left him, she did now return, even as he was completing his hasty toilet. As she came alone, having left a lady with the lute on the guard below. He stood now before her, a brave figure, despite his tumbled black locks, and the fact that the red hose of fine cloth was a little short for his long shanks, and therefore a little cramping. But the kilted tunic became him well with its girdle of steel and leather, which he was buckling even as she entered. She swept forward to the table and came straight to business. "And now, sir, your message?" His fingers stood arrested on the buckle. His solemn dark eyes opened wide as they searched her pale face. "Message?" quoth he slowly. "Message, yes." Her tone betrayed the least impatience. "What has happened? What has become of Sir Grafredo? Why has he not been near me this fortnight? What did the Lord Barbaresco bid you tell me? Come, come, sir, you need not hesitate. Surely you know that I am the Princess Valeria of Montferrat?" All that he understood of this was that he stood in a princely presence, before the august sister of the sovereign Marquis of Montferrat. Had he been reared in the world, he might have been awe-stricken by the circumstances. But he knew princes and princesses only from books written by chroniclers and historians, who treat them familiarly enough. If anything about her commanded his respect, it was her slim grace and her rather elusive beauty. A beauty that is not merely of colour and of features, but of the soul and mind alive in these. His hands fell limply away from the buckle, which he had made fast at length. His lively countenance looked almost foolish as dimly seen in the yellow light of the lantern. Madonna, I do not understand. I'm no messenger, You're no messenger. Her tawny head was thrust forward. Her dark eyes glowed. Were you not sent to me? Answer, man. Were you not sent? Not other than by an inscrutable providence, which may desire to preserve me for better things than a rope. The whimsical note of the answer may have checked her stirring anger. There was a long pause in which she pondered him with eyes that were become unfathomable. Mechanically, she loosed the long black cloak that covered her low-cut sheathing gown of sapphire blue. Why then did you come? Was it to spy? No, you're not that. A spy would have gone differently to work. What are you then? Just a poor scholar on his travels, studying life at first hand and a trifle more rapidly than he can digest it. As for how I came into your garden, let me tell you. And he told her with admirable succinctness the sorry tale of that day's events. It drove the last vestige of wrath from her face, and drew the ghost of a smile to the corners of a mouth that could be as tender as imperious. Observing it, he realized that whilst she had given him sanctuary under a misapprehension, yet she was not likely to visit her obvious disappointment too harshly upon him. And a thought, and she broke off and trolled a little laugh, between mirth and bitterness. It was a lucky chance for you, Master Fugitive. She considered him again, and it may be that his stalwart young male beauty had a hand unconsciously in shaping her resolves concerning him. What am I to do with you? She asked him. He answered simply and directly, speaking not as a poor nameless scholar to a high-born princess, but as equal to equal, as a young man to a young woman. If you're what your face tells me, Madonna, you will let me profit by an error that entails no less for yourself, beyond that of these garments, which if you wish it. She waved the proposal aside before it was uttered. Pooh, the garments, what are they? She frowned thoughtfully. But I named names to you. Did you? I've forgotten them. And in answer to the hard incredulity of her stare, he explained himself. A good memory, Madonna, lies in as much an ability to forget as in a capacity to remember, and I have an excellent memory. By the time I shall have stepped out of this garden, I shall have no recollection that I was ever in it. Slowly she spoke after a pause. If I were sure that I could trust you, she left it there. Bellarion smiled. Unless you're certain that you can, you had better call the guard. But then how can you be sure that in that case I shall not recall the names you named, which are now forgotten? Ah, you threaten. The sharp tone, the catch in her breath, the sudden movement of her hand to her breast showed him that his inference was right. This lady was engaged in secret practices, and the inference itself displayed the swift activity of his wits, just as his answer displayed them. Nay, lady, I show you only that trust me you must, since if you mistrust me, you can no more order my arrest than you can set me free. My faith, sir, you are shrewd for one who's convent bred. There's a deal of shrewdness, lady, to be learned in convents. And then whether the beauty and charm of her so wrought upon him as to breed in him the desire to serve her, or whether he merely offered a bargain, a return for value received and to be received, it is probable that he did not know himself, but he made his proposal. If you would trust me, Madonna, you might even use me, and so repay yourself. Use you? As a messenger, in the place of him who you expected. That is, if you have messages to send, as I think you should have. You think it? From what you have said. I said so little. She was clearly suspicious. But I inferred so much. Too much, perhaps. Let me expose my reasoning. The truth is, he was a little vain of it. You expected a messenger from one Lord Barbaresco. You left the garden gate ajar to facilitate his entrance when he came, and you were on the watch for him, and alone. Your ladies, one of whom at least is in your confidence, were beguiling the gentlemen and keeping them in the lower garden, whilst you loitered watchfully by the hedged enclosure. Hence I argue on your part anxiety and secrecy. You were anxious because no message had come for a fortnight, nor had Monsieur Goffredo, the usual messenger, been seen. Almost you may have feared that some evil had befallen Messer Goffredo, if not the Lord Barbaresco himself, which shows that the secret practices of which these messages are the subject may themselves be dangerous. Do I read the signs fluently? There was little need for his question. Her face supplied the answer. Too fluently, I think. Too fluently for one who is no more than you represent yourself. It is, Madonna, that you are not accustomed to the exercise of pure reason. It is rare enough. Pure reason. Her scorn where his fatuity had expected wonder was like a searing iron. And do you know, sir, what pure reason tells me? I can believe anything, Madonna, he said, alluding to the tone she had used with him. That you were sent to set a trap for me. He perceived exactly by what steps she had come to that conclusion. He smiled reassuringly and shook his moist head. The reasoning is not pure enough. If I had been so sent, should I have been pursued and hunted? And should I not have come prepared with some trivial message to assure you that I am the messenger you were so very ready to believe me? She was convinced, but still she hesitated. But why, concluding so much and so accurately, should you offer to serve me? Say from gratitude to one who has saved perhaps my life? But I did so under a misapprehension. That should compel no gratitude. I like to think, Madonna, that you would have shown me the same charity, even if there had been no misapprehension. I am the more grateful for what you have done because I choose to believe that in any case you would have done it. Then there is the handsome suit to be paid for. And lastly, and chiefly, the desire to serve a lady in need of service, which I believe is not an altogether strange desire in a man of sensibility. It has happened aforetime. That was as near as he would go to a confession that she had beglamored him. Since it was a state of mind that did not rest upon pure reason, it is one to which he would have been reluctant to confess even to himself. She pondered him, and it seemed to him that like her searching glance laid bare all that he was, and all that he was likely to be. These are slight and unworldly reasons, she said at last. I am possibly an unworldly fellow. You must be indeed to propose knight-errantry. But her need, as he had already surmised, and as he was later fully to understand, was great and urgent. It may almost have seemed to her, indeed, as if Providence had brought her this young man, not only for his own salvation, but for hers. The service may entail risk, she warned him, and a risk far greater than any you have run tonight. Risk sweetens enterprise, he answered, and wit can conquer it. Her smile broadened. Almost she laughed. You have a high confidence in your wit, sir. Whereas you would say the experience of the last 24 hours should make me humble. Its lesson, believe me, has not been lost. I am not again to be misled by appearances. Well, here's to test you then. And she gave him her message, which was after all a very cautious one, the betrayal of which could hardly harm her. He was to seek the Lord Barbaresco, of whom she told him nothing, beyond the fact that the gentleman dwelt in a house behind the cathedral, which any townsman would point out to him. He was to inquire after his health, about which he was about to add, the absence of news was making her uneasy. As a credential to the Lord Barbaresco, she gave him the broken half of her gold ducat. Tomorrow evening, she concluded, you will find the garden gate ajar again at about the same hour, and I shall be waiting. Chapter 6. The Winds of Fate. You behold Master Bellarion, treading the giddy slope of high and mysterious adventure, fortuitously launched upon a course whose end he was very far from discerning, but which most certainly was not the University of Pavia, the pursuit of Greek studies, and the recovery of an unblemished faith. Lorenzaccio de Trino has more to answer for than the acts of brigandage for which the law pursued him. In the gloom of that September night, after the moon had set, Bellarion, in raiment which already might be taken to symbolize the altered aim and purpose of his life, were of himself poor straw upon the winds of fate, he was as yet unconscious, slipped from a gateway that was no longer guarded, and directed his steps towards the heart of town. Coming in the cathedral square upon a company of the watch, going rounds with pikes and lanterns, he staggered a little in his gait, and broke raucously into song to give himself the air of a belated, carefree reveller. Knowing no bawdy, worldly songs proper to a man of his apparent circumstances and condition, he broke into a Gregorian chant, which he rendered in anything but the unisonous manner proper to that of the form of plain-song. The watch, deeming him, as he computed, that they would, an impudent parodist, warned him against disturbing the peace of the night, and asked who he was, whence he came, and whither he went. Unprepared for these questions, he rose magnificently and rather incoherently to the occasion. He knew that there was a house of Augustinian fathers in Casale, and boldly he stated that he had been supping there. Thus launched, his invention soared. The prior's brother was married to his sister, and he had borne messages to the prior from that same brother, who dwelt in Sigliano, and was, like himself, a subject to the Duke of Savoy. He was lodged with his cousin german, the Lord Barbaresco, whose house, having arrived but that day in Casale, was experiencing some difficulty in finding. Body of Bacchus, is that the reason? Quoth the leader of the patrol, to the infinite amusement of his men. They were as convinced as he himself was appalled by the fluency of his lying. Perhaps from that sympathy which men in his supposed state so commonly command, perhaps from the hope of reward, they volunteered to escort him to his cousin's dwelling. To the narrow street behind the cathedral, of which the Lord Barbaresco's was the most imposing house, they now conducted him, and loudly they battered on his lordship's iron-studded door, until from a window overhead a quavering voice desired to know who knocked. His lordship's cousin returning home, replied the officer of the watch. Make haste to open. There was a mutter of voices in the dark overhead, and Bellarion awaited fearfully the repudiation he knew must come. What cousin? Roared another, deeper voice. I'm expecting no cousin at this hour. He is angry with me, Bellarion explained. I had promised to return to sup with him. He threw back his head, called up into the night in a voice momentarily clear. Although the hour is late, I pray you, cousin, do not leave me standing here. Admit me and all shall be explained. He stressed the verb, for which the Lord Barbaresco should have one meaning, and for the too pertinacious watch another. And then he added certain mystic words to clinch the matter. And bring a ducat to reward these good fellows. I promised them a ducat, and I've upon me only half a ducat. The half a ducat, he repeated, as if with drunken insistence. And what is half a ducat? No more than a broken coin. The soldiers grinned at his drunken whimsicality. There was a long moment's pause. Then the deep voice above said, "Wait," and a casement slammed. Soon came a rasping of bolts, and the heavy door swung inwards, revealing a stout man in a purple bedgown, who shaded a candle flame with his hand. The light was thrown up into a red, fleshly face that was boldly humorous, with a hooked nose and alert blue eyes under arched black brows. Bellarion was quick to supply the cue. "Dear cousin, my excuses. I should have returned sooner. These good fellows have been most kind to me in this strange town." Standing a little in front of the unsuspecting members of the watch, he met with the Lord Barbaresco's searching glance, by a grimace of warning. "Give them the ducat for their pains, cousin, and let them go with God." "I thank you, sir," he said to the ancient, "for your care of my cousin, a stranger here." And he dropped a gold coin into the readily projected palm. He stood aside, his hand upon the edge of the door. "Come you in, cousin." But once alone with his enforced visitor in the stone passage, dimly lighted by that single candle, his lordship's manner changed. "Who the devil are you, and what the devil do you seek?" Bellarion showed his fine teeth in a broad smile. All sign of his intoxication vanished. "If you had not already answered those questions for yourself, you would neither have admitted me nor parted with your ducats, sir. I am what you were quick to suppose me. To the watch I am your cousin, lodging with you on a visit to Casale. Lest you should repudiate me, I mentioned the half ducat as a password." "It was resourceful of you," Barbaresco grunted. "Who sent you?" "My lord, the unnecessary questions that you ask. Why, the Lady Valeria, of course. Behold." Under the eyes of Messer Barbaresco, he flashed the broken half of a ducat. His lordship took the golden fragment, and holding it near the candle flame, read the half of the date inscribed upon it, then returned it to Bellarion, inviting him at last to come above stairs. They went up, Barbaresco leading, to a long, low-ceilinged chamber of the mezzanine, the walls of which were hung with soiled and shabby tapestries, the floor of which had been unswept for weeks. His lordship lighted a cluster of candles in a leaden candle branch, and their golden light further revealed the bareness of the place, its sparse and hard-worn furnishings heavy with dust. He drew an armchair to the table where writing implements and scattered papers made an untidy litter. He waved his guest to a seat and asked his name. "Bellarion." "I never heard of the family." "I never heard of it myself, but that's no matter. It's a name that serves as well as any other." "Ah," Barbaresco accepted the name as assumed. He brushed the matter aside by gesture. "Your message." "I bring no message. I come for one. Her Highness is distracted by the lack of news from you, and by the fact that, although she has waited daily for a fortnight, in all that time Messer Goffredo has not been near her." Bellarion was still far from surmising who this Messer Goffredo might be or what, but he knew that mention of the name must confirm him in Barbaresco's eyes, and perhaps lead to a discovery touching the identity of its owner. Because of the interest which the tawny-headed, sombre-eyed princess inspired in him, Bellarion was resolved to go beyond the precise extent of his mission as defined by her. Giffre took fright, weak-stomached knave. He fancied himself observed when last he came from the palace garden, and nothing would induce him to go again. So that whatever the intrigue Bellarion now perceived, it was not amorous. Goffredo clearly was a messenger and nothing more. Barbaresco himself, with his corpulence in his 50 years or so, was incredible as a lover. Could not another have been sent in his place? A messenger, my friend, is not readily found. Besides, nothing has transpired in the last 2 weeks of which it was urgently necessary to inform Her Highness. Surely it was urgently necessary to inform Her Highness of just that, so as to allay her natural anxiety. Leaning back in his chair, his plump hands, which were red like all the rest of him that was visible, grasping the ends of its arms, the gentleman of Casale pondered Bellarion gravely. You assume a deal of authority, young sir. Who and what are you to be so deeply involved in the confidence of your highness? Bellarion was prepared for the question. I am an amanuensis of the palace, whose duties happen to have brought me closely into touch with the princess. It was a bold lie, but one which he could support at least, and at need by proofs of scholarliness. Barbaresco nodded slowly. And your precise interest in Her Highness? Bellarion's smile was a little deprecating. Now what would you suppose it? I'm not supposing, I'm asking. Shall we say the desire to serve her? And Bellarion's smile became at once vague and eloquent. This, taken in conjunction with his reticence, might seem to imply romantic attachment. Barbaresco, however, translated it otherwise. You have ambitions, so that is as it should be. Interest is ever the best spur to endeavor. And this seems like a good place to call it a night. We're about to go into some other storytelling, which probably is going to go on for a long time, so we'll say goodnight there. As always, if you would like to pick up where we're leaving off, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week, but make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. Good night, and sweet dreams.